David Todd and I were friends before we were in the first grade. And he would go home with me on Saturdays, and we would meet up with his parents Sunday morning at church, and vice versa. I would go home with him on Saturdays, spend the night, and meet up with my parents at church Sunday morning. And a lot of times we would go to each other's house on Sunday in between worship services. And David would always come to me and say, Don, what is your mother having for dinner? And I would tell him, and my mother was a very good cook. And I would really want to go to my mother's for dinner because I knew what Hattie B, David's mother, was going to make. And I knew that I liked what my mother made a whole lot better than what Hattie B made, whatever that meal was. But David was an influence on me, and he could talk me into doing anything, and I would go home with him and play, and we'd eat, of course, dinner with the Todds, and that was fine. But his parents and my parents were real good friends. They played 42 on Sunday nights after church a lot of time. David Todd and I would go out and play in the yard, and then we got in the first grade. So David Todd comes up to me one day during recess and says, Don, am I your best friend? And he was. And I said, yes, David, you are. He said, well, if I'm your best friend, would you give me your nickel your mother gives you for an ice cream stick? Since David Todd is my best friend, I reached in my pocket and I gave him that nickel. And that was fine because why? David Todd's my best friend. And he could talk me into anything anyway, apparently. And this went on day after day after day. And I'm not getting my ice cream stick. And it's starting to bother me. And I think to myself, how can I handle this? And I think, well, hey, his mother and dad are real close with my mother and dad. I ought to be able to go home and tell my mama what David Todd's doing, and then she can talk with Hattie B, David Todd's mother, and get Hattie B to give him his own nickel or get him to stop asking for mine. That was a first grader's way of solving the problem. So I go home and I tell my mama what's taking place. Didn't go the way I had it planned. My mother said, son, are you giving away that nickel we give you every day? Because they didn't have a lot of money to give away. And I said, yes, ma'am. She said, we ain't giving you a nickel no more. I thought, good grief, I could have handled it better than that. I could have just said, David, I'm not going to give you my nickel. And I'd still have my nickel. Now I'm not getting it. He's not getting it either. But we remained friends throughout all of that. And he was best man at my wedding. I was best man at his wedding. And we've remained friends to this day. But anytime my best friend did anything that I didn't like, I'd say, you know what, David, you're the sorry sack that took my nickels. And of course, he couldn't say anything about it because he was the sorry sack that took my nickels. And so David always wanted me to go into business with him. Even while we were in the first grade, he talked about he and I working together. Well, I already knew what it was like working with David in my daddy's barn. It was his way or the highway, and I never got to do the things that I wanted to do because he would talk me out of it. And one day he rode his bicycle instead of having his mother drive him to my house, and I wanted to hammer and he wanted to hammer. And he said, Don, if you don't let me have that hammer, I'm going to get on my bicycle and ride home. And for the first time, I stood up for myself and I said, well, David, right there's the road. Get on your bike. And I got the hammer. And so I knew from events like that that I wanted to be friends with him for life, and I didn't think us working together would make for a very good friendship, and so I elected not to go into business with him. Now, he only sold his business for $2.5 million the other day, and I could have been part of that, but I made the better choice because I don't know that we could remain friends. So, but anytime like I say, anytime he would do something I wouldn't like, I'd throw it up to him and say, "You're the sorry sack that took my nickels." And so I come home from work one Friday afternoon during deer season, and he knows that as a school teacher, the only time I can go deer hunting is on Saturday. And I'm not going to go on Sunday, so I can only go Saturday morning and Saturday evening. And so I get home, and my sweet wife tells me that David Todd had called, said he was going to be in Beeville, not in Beeville, but to Wharton on business, and wanted to come by and visit me the next day. And I think, the next day I was going deer hunting. He takes my nickels. Now he's taking my deer hunting away from me. Wants to visit with me. And then my sweet wife told me that, well, he can't be here till the afternoon. So I thought, well, at least I can get the morning hunt. And so I did. I went and hunted. I didn't kill anything that day, but I got to go hunt. And so David Todd had already started making high dollar deer blinds, and he sold them all across Texas, New Mexico, Colorado, Arkansas, and Louisiana, and even into Pennsylvania, and into Colorado, and into Montana. And they were high dollar blinds. The most expensive one was a blind that was 5 foot by 8 foot long, mounted on a 6 foot by 10 foot trailer. And the cost of that deer blind was $5,800. And he had been delivering these blinds too for, he made money delivering them. And when he pulls up to my house that Saturday afternoon, there's a trailer in behind his, with a deer blind on it, in behind his truck. And I say, "David, well, where are you taking this one?" He said, "Oh, near here." And I thought to myself at the time, who around here can afford your blinds? Because I sure can't. And so we went inside and we talked for about 15-20 minutes. He said, "Don, let me tell you about that trailer." He said, it's the largest and it's the best blind that I've made thus far. He said, "Why don't you come out there and help me put the staircase on it and the 2 rails." It had a staircase with rails. I'd never had anything like that before, with a 2 foot wide porch on the front of it. He said, "Why don't you climb up in there and tell me what you think about what the deer blind looks like?" And so I climb up there, and man alive, it is plush. It's got carpet not on the floor but on the walls. So if you bump the wall with your gun, it would muffle the sound. There's 2 shelves, one about a foot and a half off the floor that you could put things on, and had carpet on top of it, and then a shelf at the level of the windows that had carpet on it, and there was a shot bag over there that you could stick out the aluminum window and not mar your forearm when the gun would go off, and it had sheer curtains, 2 of them, with a rod at the top and a rod at the bottom so the curtain didn't blow around in the breeze. And you could have it all half on each side or all on one side, or you could position the curtains just, they were sheer so you could even see through them, but it would mask your image. It was really great. And I look over there above the door on the inside, and there stenciled in white letters was "All nickels paid back with interest." And my first thoughts was, well, I guess that's meaningful for whomever's purchases anything, because it don't mean anything to me. And I stepped out on that front porch, that 2 foot wide front porch, and looked down at Barbara, and she's grinning like a possum eating persimmons, and so is Dana, David's wife. And David says, "Well, Don, what'd you see on the inside?" I said, "Well, I saw carpet on the floor and on the walls and on the shelves. There's a shot bag over there. You got 3 aluminum windows on each side, and 1 large window on the end, and a window in the door, and a shot bag over there." And he said, "Well, what else did you see?" And I thought, what did I overlook? And I walked back in there, and it dawned on me, all nickels paid back with interest. I had cold chills from the top of my head to the toes, and I thought, he can't be doing this. $5,800 is going to kill his profit. And I thought, what can I tell that guy that first of all, I don't even need a blind. I made my own deer blinds. And the guys at my deer lease thought that they were hotels. They were so much better than, I'm a shop teacher. And I made real good deer blinds. They were made by my specs, the way I liked them. And I didn't need another deer blind. Didn't have a place to put it anyway. And I thought, I've got to tell him something to get him to take this thing back. And I stepped out there and I said, David, you just can't be doing this. And he said, Don, I want to tell you right now, all nickels are now paid back with interest. And not only did he do that, but he said, I have a straight blade knife right here, a fixed blade knife that I carry all the time, and I want you to have it. So not only did I get the blind, but I got a knife that he gave me. And he got in his truck, and after he said goodbye and all and everything, and he pulled back in and said, oh, I forgot to give you. His blinds were under the heading of trophy blinds, and he gave me a cap that said trophy blinds on it. And then he told me, he said, when you shoot your first deer in that blind, he said, take a picture of you with your deer in front of the blind and send it to me, and I'll put you on the internet. And so if you go to trophyblinds.com, you'll see that blind, and you'll see the deer that I did not kill in that blind. I killed it in another guy's blind and hauled it over to my blind because it was a real nice buck. And he put that deer on my four-wheeler and me behind it in that blind on trophyblinds.com.